gentlemen, boys and girls, we are proud to announce that you are in for a wonderful surprise. Something that will brighten your days for years to come. We are proud to announce that a new neighbor has moved in right here on your street. A new neighbor who will bring untold benefits to you and the entire neighborhood. A new neighbor who will become a great and true friend to each and every resident. And now, without further ado, we would like to introduce you to your new neighbor, a tree. Yes, a tree. We realize that introducing a tree as your new neighbor may sound a bit silly. But if you think about it, that might be a good way to help you understand the true value that this new boulevard tree brings to your neighborhood, and how you can help by being a good neighbor to the tree in return. For example, a good neighbor doesn't do things that cause the neighborhood's property values to go down. That makes the tree a very good neighbor indeed, because as the tree grows, it will actually help your property values go up. And in addition, the tree itself will also continue to increase in value as it grows larger. Another example is that a good neighbor doesn't pollute the neighborhood. Well, not only will this tree not cause pollution, it will actually counteract pollution as it cleans up the air naturally. The leaves of a tree take in carbon dioxide and emit or exhale pure oxygen. While the trees are performing this transformation, they are also filtering out pollutants from the air you breathe. And speaking of leaves, the shade that a nice full tree makes can help keep our homes and cars more comfortable. Shade provided by the trees of our urban forest helps to lower energy use and air conditioning costs. Shade trees can also help to reduce glare, reflections, and fading. Another benefit of the trees in your neighborhood can be safety. You might not be aware of it, but trees that are properly spaced and positioned during their planting can create a unique psychological effect that can actually cause motorists to drive slower, thereby making your streets safer for all concerned. Trees can also enhance the quality of life in the neighborhood by providing the beauty of spring flowers and fall colors. Trees make our neighborhoods more enjoyable by helping to reduce noise and by providing a place for birds and other wildlife. And finally, trees help make the neighborhood more attractive. They can help hide unsightly views or buildings, and they can provide privacy for our yards. So you see that, in fact, a tree can be a neighbor, a very good neighbor. And you, in turn, can be a good neighbor to this tree by treating it right and helping it grow and stay healthy. But first, you might be interested to know how this new tree came to be here in the first place. The process that's involved in deciding where and when a new boulevard tree is planted in Minneapolis. The Forestry section of the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board is responsible for all of the boulevard trees in the city. This responsibility includes everything from planting new trees, to trimming existing trees, to removing dead or damaged trees. In fact, the Forestry section has been deeply involved in the concept and care of our urban forest since the late 1880s. And they have been teaching citizens about the care and value of trees since the early 1980s through partnering with neighborhood groups for Arbor Day celebrations, through providing educational programs to schools and civic groups, and through personal contact with neighborhood residents. The professional arborists who staff the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board's Forestry section seek out and remove trees that are diseased or that have become a hazard due to storm damage or old age. The foresters are also responsible for the periodic trimming that many trees require in order to grow properly and remain healthy. And of course, as we have already mentioned, the Forestry section is the organization that handles all of the steps that lead to the planting of the new boulevard trees in your neighborhood. New trees are planted based on requests from citizens or citizen groups, or based on the needs of the urban forest as determined by the district foresters who are in charge of each of the 5 geographic forestry districts within the city. All of the needs and requests are collected and evaluated and compared with the available budget. And once a year in the autumn, a bidding process determines the actual number of trees that will be planted and who will supply them. Then in the early spring and again in late autumn, the trees are delivered to the forestry holding site where they are organized and cared for until they can be planted. The funding for new trees comes from several sources, including the Forestry section's regular replanting budget, disbursements from neighborhood revitalization programs, allocations from the city's Public Works Department in the course of their various repair or improvement projects, and from various grants and gifts. The exact location of a new tree depends on many different considerations. Will the proposed location interfere with utilities above or below the ground? We work together with the utility companies to assure that trees are planted in the best possible locations, both for the good of the trees and for the future safety and efficiency of the utility workers. Does the type of tree chosen for a location fit the master planting plan? Back in the late 1970s, when we were dealing with the devastating effects of Dutch elm disease, a carefully conceived master plan was created to help assure that no single blight could ever again decimate the entire urban forest the way that Dutch elm disease had denuded so many American cities. That plan was developed in cooperation with the residents of each of the city's 81 neighborhoods and specifies what species of trees will be planted in what locations. The final consideration in the placement of the tree is the harshness of the proposed site and any potential interference from outside influences that might hinder the tree's growth and health. For instance, is the site in a location that receives a large amount of road salt in the winter? Are there other trees so close that they would prevent the new tree from obtaining sufficient sunlight or nutrients? Or will the tree be subjected to constant damage from trucks or buses breaking its branches? Once these details have been considered and resolved, it's time to actually plant the new boulevard tree. First, the tree is removed from its mulch bed at the holding site. Almost all of our new trees are bare root trees. Bare root trees don't have a large, heavy ball of dirt tied around their roots. That makes them easier to move, easier to plant, and therefore much more cost-effective. However, since they are bare root plants, they are dipped in a root conditioner that both protects and stimulates the growth of the tender young root system. In the interest of time and safety, most of the planting holes for new trees are usually dug by hand. The holes are dug to an ample size that will accommodate the root spread of the new tree, and that will assure that the new tree is positioned at the proper depth. Planting depth is very important to the health and the survival of a new tree. Once the hole is dug and the tree is planted, it receives a substantial initial watering to help settle the soil and assure that there are no air pockets in the root system. And finally, a generous layer of wood chips is placed in a circle around the base of the tree. The wood chips help to retain moisture for the tree's roots, as well as help prevent the devastating and potentially fatal damage that can occur when lawnmowers or weed whips tear the tender protective bark from a young tree. Now we come to the subject of how you can be a good neighbor to the new tree in your neighborhood. With hundreds and sometimes even thousands of new trees being planted each year, the number of trees needing care far outnumber the small staff of foresters who work in the city. Consequently, there are several things you can do to be a good neighbor to the new tree on your street. First of all, and probably most importantly, this new tree needs to be watered regularly. And if nature doesn't cooperate with regular rainfall, you can help out by making sure that the tree gets a drink about once each week. The best way to water a young tree is to simply lay the end of a hose at the base of the tree and turn the water on to a slow trickle for about an hour. The goal is to give the roots a good deep soaking every week. Also, try to make sure that the protective ring of wood chips is replenished so that the tree is properly mulched at all times. By the way, free wood chips are available at several forestry locations throughout the city. And finally, please try to avoid damaging the tender bark of the young tree by keeping your lawnmower and weed eater a safe distance from the trunk. Damage from mowers and weed whips allow disease to easily attack a young tree and is one of the biggest reasons that trees die. Please remember that ultimately, the long-term care and responsibility for the city's boulevard trees lies with the forestry section of the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board. This includes the responsibility for any necessary pruning the tree may require, as well as the responsibility and the authority for the removal of any diseased trees. So please don't take it upon yourself to prune or remove boulevard trees. If you have a question or need to report a problem with a tree, please call the forestry professionals and let them take care of it. If we all work together, we can assure that you and the trees on your street can enjoy a long, satisfying relationship as neighbors. If you'll be a good neighbor to the trees will be good neighbors to you.